Action.
Sean?
Action.
Oh, action! Hello! Welcome to Darsta. I'm Pinot, Gris. Today I have already escaped my kotatsu. I have picked up my beer cans. I have even made a cup of tea, which is someplace nearby my feet in a dangerous location. And Masamurai brought me about to talk about my new order of books, it seems. Yeah. So the book, I ordered a big pile of books to go on top of my pile of reading books already, because I am weird like that. And one of these books is what? Super Gods by Grant Morrison. And he's a comic book artist from the DC company. And he's a very interesting thinker, I think. And he might not even know it, but he has a lot of insight into the modern era. Have you ever heard of him, Masamurai? No. Your voice isn't on streaming. Okay, that's not useful. Only for the beginning. So, but that's what I want to talk about today. Will you come into the streaming now, please, Masamurai?
Yeah,
okay, so you've not heard of him? What is your impression of like DC and Marvel?
I haven't heard that. The name of the guy, Grant Morrison?
Yes, Grant Morrison.
Sounds like a DC comic artist. Not Marvel. So you already actually started, so I need to change the background music.
Oh, well, we were listening to some of the Marvel music because comic book superheroes are very popular now, and like very, very popular. Those are the big production movies that everybody's bowling to get huge profits from. But Grant Morrison, I haven't read much of him at all. I read The Seven Soldiers, which is a very interesting idea that he was given a handful of minor superheroes when he joined DC, and he put on this giant epic story about how they all were fated to oppose some evil invading lady who like shows up every 10,000 years or something, and they basically eat the world and then let it regrow, and that's how they gain their vitality. And this was all set into motion the first time she was defeated in the ancient world by King Arthur. Not the King Arthur from England, the King Arthur originally. So the first hero, as it were. And it has a stunning set of visuals, and I was happy that I could read it as an omnibus so that I could go. It was very easy for me to look back and see the connections that wound underneath the pages through the omnibus. And so his philosophy I haven't really heard a lot about, as I didn't even know that he published a book on it. But it seems I've read a little bit here and there on like forum posts, and if you remember Flip Sticker, do you remember him, Masamurai? He So yeah, my basic idea, Flip Sticker introduced me to a lot about it. He's much more knowledgeable, but I haven't really picked his brain over it too much. But yeah, so the Super Gods book is what does he call it? Living in the Age of the Superhero. And if I have his idea correct, it is something like something about us our relationship to imagination and things like that requires us to express a crisis, which is then resolved, and like we obey this crisis, and we are one point along the series of this crisis, which is winding through the imaginary world into the superheroes who then resolve it, and the ultimate resolution is when we witness it. But one thing I noticed about him is that he, well, to develop that idea more, he's very much like a shaman, I think. Like, very much this kind of underlying dream world of liminal positions and images where just things show up. And then we witness them, and then they go away. And so appearances are coming, and appearances are going, and anything that becomes appears. But nothing really is. So that's like his basic idea of the comic. Oopsie. Is the comic is like, if you think about it, it's these, you have the blank space, and then the blank space becomes divided. And then there is some portrayal, and then there is another portrayal on the next division, in that our imagination sets this into motion. We fill in the blanks. We see some guy wind back with his hand, and maybe some action marks, and then we see in between the frames, we see like a big bright pop, and then we see the other person holding his cheek. And we imagine pop, right? We know that that's what happened. And that becomes real, even though it's all frozen in division. And if I think about it, that is a movie reel, right? If you speed this up enough, you visually see the motion. So now you have not just an internal stimulation, you have a visual stimulation to your sight, right? But then all human perception is this way. We know that our vision is only catching flashes of the world around us. And our whole brain just samples, kind of like a computer. And we know that because if we start slowing it down like a movie, you can see the individual frames go by. And if it slows down a little bit, but not enough, you see a disjunction. So here, the comic book already describes to us our entire relationship to the world around us, which is quite, it's a kid's game, and the kids do it naturally without understanding. But it's not a kid's game, as in it's not nothing, right? It's actually quite significant to being a person. Masamurai, you're in movies, like you've done quite a lot of film training and stuff like that. Did you ever get into this sort of theory?
Yep. That's very common for me.
Mm-hmm. This very what?
Common.
Oh, it is. It is a common idea.
Yes.
That's interesting. I need to read a little bit more. I suppose it probably is. I mean, it's quite obvious once you have the tools to look at it, I suppose. And then one of the other reasons I call him a shaman isn't just because it's a cool sounding word, but because he talks about specifically the hypercrisis as like this feminine energy, like it's this creative womb that every month swells with the potential of life and then has to be published and distributed, which is here just like menstruation. And so like shamans, when I've gathered, as best I can tell about their work, they they physically can be men or women, but when they work, they take on both. I guess even shamanic costumes have like very masculine appearances, but like breast-like symbols on them and things, because all of these vital energies are present in humans. Yeah, so that's like the production cycle is itself, like human industry is itself this very feminine, fertile, earth-like position, which I think is quite ignored in the modern sense because we imagine like the manly functifying of the. That's all we know is this manly explosion, the erection and movement and profits going up. And we fail to realize that that is specifically grounded in fertility, that neither of these exists apart from each other. I don't know. Does that make at all sense? Okay. Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I mean, like, the masculine stuff is where a lot of the action happens, isn't it? That's where the hero's journey is kind of typically very masculine. So, and then like boys, for a long time, I think like one of the basics of sort of the feminine sense of self is that you sort of exist already in your traits of some femininity. That's something that you just appear with. And in one dimension, in one aspect. And then the male counterpart to that aspect is that males have to somehow be inducted into it. They have to do something. I don't know. Grant Morrison would be thinking about it. I haven't even opened this book except to read. I was looking to see when it was copyrighted when he wrote it, and there's no information. There's just a quote from Friedrich Nietzsche about like Auspracht Zarathustra, where he says something like, "Behold the Superman, he is the lightning from which all things come," or something like that. But it's kind of interesting because Nietzsche is really easy to misunderstand, especially I find English translations of it really don't capture what he was getting at. So, but I think that brings me to my next thought. Join me this way. It's so goofy when my avatar. Life, modern, like in the comic book, like life sort of springs up. These characters have to exist in some sort of thing, but then we're like tied to it. But life isn't like an essence, I don't think. Like something that exists behind what we see, some true form of it. Life is exactly that appearance. Life is exactly the divided frame where something is. And it appears on this background of nothingness, this blank sheet. Let me grab the pen real quick. Here, I'm back. If I divide it into something really crude, and I have, two guys holding their swords, and another guy over here. Holding his axe, and then some kind of movement. Like, I can very crudely make a story about somebody getting killed. But, it appears only with these divisions on the white frame. And once, we see it, these frames, it kind of just happens. It has to occur that way. There's no other way it could occur. We can imagine maybe a few pages back or a whole issue back, some small change that would precipitate something differently, to throw it down differently. But once it is thrown down, that is precipitated, this is the only way it can appear, and that is fate. So fate is kind of odd simultaneously. At any moment from here, now that I've gotten here, anything can happen going forward. We don't know. But from the back, it could have been no other way. And but I think this negative space is really interesting because we see it as a white area, but it's nothingness, which we normally conceive as blackness. And so like the true form, if you were, the only thing that's behind this appearance is blankness, nothingness, nihility, the negaverse. And that and the other thing I know about Grant Morrison is he thinks a lot about the negaverse. He has like a whole dark universe idea that there are like the forms of the comic that were never meant to be put into appearance, that were never meant to be told, and therefore are collapsing. They're supposed to be destroyed. They get aborted from the productive cycle of the womb, and they're fighting for their own existence. So then, if we imagine them, if I were to write about a cursed world, maybe when the space between my frames would be black, not white. But you see that they're the same thing. I've just somehow gone here, I'm looking at my white space, and somehow I've gone pop, and now they are black. And I can go back, and now they are white. And I don't know if Grant Morrison picks this up, but I think this is what Nietzsche was talking about with the abyss and the mountain. That, I've fallen down, I'll be right up. That if I truly descend into my dark, dark abyss, eventually I realize that this shape is the top of the mountain, that I can invert it, and now there is nothing beyond me. I'm here now at the summit, able to look down at the world, knowing that I've come through the abyss. And from this point where these two meet, the highest and the lowest, all things, infinite freedom opens up. Like, we're always in this freedom, but we don't like it. It looks like to us the abyss. So by wiping the page clean and truly sitting there with nothing, even not ourselves, we reach this point. I don't know if Grant Morrison can understand that, or if he catches that or not. He might talk about it and not even know it. I'm interested in seeing, especially since he's already talking, I know, about the failed dark universes. Do you have questions?
Yes. Why you named this topic as modern shaman?
Because I think that what I gathered about the shamanistic religion, the shamans do a lot, I think, with like spiritual damage and trying to, sneeze.
Let's see.
Oh,
Beforehand.
stupid spring allergies. The shamans, I think, are people who look down into this abyss. That they're also hung between these opposites of nothing and something. They're presented with a choice of either this or that, and they engage with that choice fully. And that's why people go to them with their psychic problems. And also, particularly, they tell it through stories, through imagery that's brought up. And they have this androgynous, it's not androgynous, but it is incorporating both male and female into the self-identity of the shamanistic moment, which Grant Morrison does. So I think that he is a version of a shaman, talking about these mythic stories in mostly American circles, but it's very much worldwide, and especially now, if it wasn't before. Comic books are huge, right? But that brings me to another interesting idea. This idea of like nihility, or ultimately everything is negated. And I think our life now is being negated. We have no future. There is no new production. More and more, all we're doing is that productive womb isn't creating something new. It is recreating, it's cycling through its own material, right? And we see this in the superhero movies. They don't introduce new characters. They try to perfect the characters who are already made. And they try to retell those stories now with a new special effect or with a new actor who more closely represents some idea. Even, although it's much contention, even the US racial identities are a version of this. Oh, the old one lacked this, so now with our newfound technologies of identity, we can improve, make it what it should have been all along. Whoopsie, bumped my wall. Even Masamura, you have what is this soundtrack you have playing on the studio sound? And what kind of sounds are those? Were they new songs bespoke for the movie? Ah, right. So they act as leitmotifs or something for some moment. But where did these songs come from? Are they what genre of music are they, generally speaking? They all share something in common, I think.
Retro.
Yes, they are all retro. They are all things from the past being used again, and that nothing new was made. Right? There is no like distinct sound that was created specifically for Guardians of the Galaxy. I find that very queer. There's my tea. I should put a tracker on my teacup. I'm not a fan of oat milk in my black tea like this, but this one's okay. Enough honey and it's fine. So that's exactly my point.
Yeah. And who's your favorite American superhero?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't know. I'm really more of a supervillain person. Can we get it to the supervillains?
Yes.
Okay, so any of those sort of super characters. I find the Joker quite compelling in some ways because I think in another dark universe, the Joker and the Batman are lovers. And that in some way that is the correct universe, and the Joker and the Batman that we know now are actually the dark universe where their love cannot exist in its correct form. So, where did my monitor go? There it is. So, can I wrap up? Sure. I'm really looking forward to reading the book. I think it was written quite a little bit ago before the Marvel movies came out, but I really hope that it gives me some more insight into these productions in American culture, which I actually don't understand very well. They don't much speak to me. And I hope maybe the viewer can also take something away to think about and reinterpret the way the modern world is structured. All right, well, thank you for watching, everybody. If this silly stream was at all interesting to you, please give a like, do a subscription if you want to see more of our content. I'm hoping that we can return to some more structured videos pretty soon, and we have some bigger things in the plans, so they're just taking a little bit to come together. But I'm looking forward to them. They're very exciting. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye. No, my arm. Stop.